At my son's company gala, his fiancée scanned me from head to toe and said coldly, "Hey, old waiter, your seat is right over there." The people around us let out soft snickers. My son approached quickly, not to defend me, but to lean in and whisper, "Dad, please go home. Don't make a scene and embarrass me." Those words from the child I had raised all by myself tightened my chest painfully. I walked away quietly, without a word. That very night, I made a crucial phone call, one that would change everything completely. A week later, I called for an emergency board meeting. When I entered the conference room filled with top executives, my son froze in shock. "Dad, what are you doing here?" he asked. Only then did everyone realize that the man they had mocked at the gala, the man my son had been ashamed of, was actually the true owner of the entire company they all worked for. Before I explain what happened next in that boardroom, I want to thank you for listening to this story. Please subscribe to the channel, like button, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Sometimes the most difficult conversations come when we least expect them. The valet glanced twice at my old truck before taking the keys. My 2011 Ford F-150, with its dented side panel, looked out of place among the rows of shiny luxury sedans parked at the entrance of the Fairmont Hotel in downtown Dallas. But it still ran reliably, and that was all I needed. The grand ballroom overwhelmed me with its warmth, noise, and glittering chandeliers that scattered light across more than 200 guests dressed like they had stepped out of a fashion magazine. The air was filled with expensive perfume, bubbling champagne, polished smiles, tailored suits, and gowns that likely cost more than my monthly expenses. I tugged nervously at my tie. The suit was the exact one I had worn to Emily's funeral 9 years ago. My hands revealed the truth. Calloused palms and rough knuckles from over 30 years of building things with my own effort. This was the anniversary gala for Pinnacle Manufacturing Group, my company, though hardly anyone present knew that fact. I spotted Jacob across the crowded room, laughing confidently with senior executives near the bar. He wore a sharp black suit and carried himself with an easy assurance. So different from the young boy who used to show up at my workshop with grease smeared on his hands. Standing beside him was the woman I had only seen in photographs. Tall, brunette, perfectly poised with her hand resting lightly on his arm. Olivia Whitaker, my son's fiancée. I moved carefully along the edges of the room, heading toward the buffet area. I only wanted to see Jacob for a moment, offer my congratulations, and then leave quietly without drawing attention. I stood near the service station, trying to figure out which fork went with which plate. "Excuse me," came a sharp and impatient voice. I turned to see Olivia staring at me over her champagne glass, her eyes cold and evaluating. "The service entrance is on the side. Guests aren't supposed to see the help lingering around here." For a second, I didn't even comprehend what she meant. She was referring to me as staff. "Are you with the catering team? If you need directions to the kitchen, I can have someone guide you." "I'm a guest," I replied, my voice feeling heavier than usual. She looked me up and down again, taking in the worn suit, the hands of a lifelong worker, the face weathered by years spent outdoors. Her smile flickered briefly, thin and false. "Oh, my mistake," she said, though her eyes told a different story. "Dad." Jacob suddenly appeared next to her. I watched surprise cross his face, quickly shifting to discomfort, and then clear embarrassment. "Dad, what are you doing here?" There was no joy in seeing me, just confusion, as if I had wandered into a place where I clearly didn't belong. "I thought I'd stop by. It's a big night for the company." I explained calmly. Jacob glanced nervously at Olivia. This is Olivia, my fiancée. Olivia, this is my father, William. He introduced me simply as William, like a casual acquaintance rather than the man who had raised him single-handedly after his mother passed. Olivia offered a perfectly practiced smile. Jacob has mentioned you, she said politely, but I would have bet anything that he never had. An executive joined our small group, and Olivia immediately switched into professional mode, discussing contracts, expansions, and supply chain details with ease. Jacob relaxed as the conversation moved away from me, settling comfortably into a world where I no longer seemed to fit. I stood there feeling completely invisible. Listen, Dad, Jacob said quietly, touching my shoulder and guiding me aside. His voice softened a little, but the message remained clear. Maybe you'd be more comfortable heading out now. Big crowds like this aren't really your thing. He was embarrassed by my presence. Yeah, I should go. I agreed quietly. As I walked toward the exit, Olivia's voice carried clearly across the room. Is that really Jacob's father? He looks like he just came from a construction site. Soft laughter followed her words. I waited for my son to say something in my defense, anything at all. He remained silent. I continued walking without looking back. The cool night air outside did little to ease the ache. The valet brought my old truck forward, trying not to show his judgment about the battered F-150 parked among vehicles where a bottle of champagne cost more than my weekly groceries. I drove home gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. No radio played, just the steady hum of tires on the road and the lingering echo of that laughter in my mind. 35 years in this city. 33 years building a company from absolutely nothing. Raising a son alone after Emily died from cancer. Double shifts at the factory. Missed meals. Every possible sacrifice so he could have the opportunities I never had growing up. And that night, my own son looked at me like someone he needed to hide away. Olivia's insult didn't cut as deeply as it might have. I had heard worse over the years from people who looked down on men who worked with their hands for a living. That kind of judgment never truly bothered me. But my son's complete silence while the woman he planned to marry treated me like worthless staff. That wounded me far more than any words could. I left before the main dinner was even served. I drove home with white knuckles and a heavy burning in my chest that wasn't just anger. It was the pain of his silence. The house in Plano was dark when I pulled into the driveway. The same home for over 35 years, with the same creaky front step I kept meaning to fix one day. Inside, the quiet felt empty and hollow rather than peaceful. I dropped my keys on the kitchen counter. The soft glow from the street lamp outside was enough to illuminate the photo magnets on the refrigerator door. One photo always caught my eye and held at Jacob at 9 years old. Gap-toothed grin. Both of us covered in grease inside my original small shop, proudly holding up a machined steel part like a trophy, his small hand resting on my shoulder. When I grow up, I'm going to build machines just like you. Dad, he had said back then. I gently touched the photo. When did I become someone he felt the need to hide from others? I poured out the old coffee grounds and started brewing a fresh pot. Even though it was well past midnight, the familiar ritual couldn't stop the flood of memories. At 24, I worked the assembly line at a local steel plant, saving every spare dollar in an old coffee can hidden away. It took 14 years to save $90,000. Emily used to sit with me and count the cash, laughing softly as she said, "You're going to build something amazing one day." We married in 1992. Jacob was born the following year. In 1998, when he was just a toddler learning to walk, I purchased my first CNC machine, rented a tiny warehouse space in Irving, and founded Pinnacle Manufacturing Group. I handled everything in those early days, operating the machines, sales calls, even cleaning the floors. Emily kept the books after her shifts at the clinic. Those first years nearly broke us financially and emotionally, but the company slowly grew stronger. Then came the devastating diagnosis: Stage 4 cancer. Just 4 months from the hospital room to the funeral. She was only 36 years old. Jacob wore a small suit at the cemetery, clutching my hand tightly, but refusing to shed a tear in front of everyone. Afterward, he asked if he could come to the shop with me every day so he wouldn't have to be home alone. So he did, completing his homework in the corner while the machines hummed loudly around him. He learned to read technical blueprints before he mastered basic math divisions. By the time he was 10, we landed our first major contract with an automotive company worth $300,000. I swung him around the kitchen in celebration, while Emily's absence still hung heavily in the air. I pushed even harder after that success, securing more contracts, expanding the facility, investing in better machines. Also, Jacob could attend the best schools and go further in life than I ever could. When the University of Texas at Austin accepted him with a full scholarship, he proudly declared, "I earned this completely on my own merit." I hugged him tightly and never corrected him about the foundation I had quietly established. 5 years later, he returned from college, different refined accent, designer clothes replacing flannels, discussing operational strategies instead of machining tolerances and tools. He stopped bringing friends to the house. He rarely mentioned his father's work or the company I had built from scratch. 7 years ago, I stepped back from daily operations and hired Robert Ellison as CEO. I told myself it was because I preferred working with machines over endless meetings. The real reason was simpler. Jacob seemed more comfortable and relaxed when I stayed out of the public eye at company events. That night after the gala, the reality of that choice stung sharper than ever before. It wasn't just his discomfort when someone might connect us. It wasn't just Olivia's overly precise questions I had overheard about our facilities, contracts, and proprietary patents. Questions that seemed too detailed for mere curiosity. Perhaps I was just a weary old machinist imagining problems where none existed, but the gut instinct that had built Pinnacle from nothing refused to stay silent. At 2:45 a.m., I called Thomas Bradley, a former Dallas PD detective with 25 years of service, now head of security for Pinnacle. "This better be important," he muttered sleepily. "I need a discreet favor," I said. "A deep background check." "On who?" I glanced again at the old photo of Jacob smiling up at me. "My son's fiancée, Olivia Whitaker." There was a long pause on the line. "You think something's wrong?" "I don't know yet, but I need to be sure." "Deep background checks take time, possibly a week or more." "I'll wait patiently." I hung up and left the fresh coffee cooling untouched on the counter. 35 years living in this house. 33 years building Pinnacle. 7 years quietly in the shadows. Perhaps Jacob wasn't the only one who had slowly disappeared from view. Maybe I had vanished first without realizing it. Sunday morning, my phone buzzed persistently and pulled me from a restless half-sleep. Thomas had uncovered something concerning. "Can you meet me?" he asked. 20 minutes later, I arrived at Pinnacle headquarters on Ross Avenue, the building empty and echoing on a weekend day. Thomas sat at his desk with his laptop open, wearing the serious expression he once used for difficult cases. It took 40 hours of digging, he said grimly, but I found the cracks in her story. He clicked through several screens. Olivia Whitaker's documented identity only went back reliably about 3 years. Before 2021, there were large gaps, missing records, vague employment history. In 2020, she had dated a vice president at Horizon Industries. 4 months later, that company suffered a significant data breach involving client information. The relationship ended immediately afterward. It could be pure coincidence, I admitted. Possibly, Thomas replied. But the same pattern appears elsewhere. Driving home through the warm September breeze with windows down, the insult from the Gala now intertwined with these darker suspicions. On Monday at the factory floor, the familiar whine of CNC machines usually grounded me, but now felt only like overwhelming noise. "You all right, William?" Sarah asked, lifting her safety glasses for a better look. "Just some family matters," I replied vaguely. She shook her head sympathetically. "That son of yours came through the shop last week. Stayed maybe 5 minutes, staring at his phone the entire time. He's forgetting where he came from. William, and you can't act like that doesn't hurt you." Tuesday afternoon. Thomas called again with an update. I found the direct connection. Payments routed through a shell consulting firm to an account linked to her, originating from Vanguard Technologies, our biggest competitor. I felt a chill despite the warm day. Wednesday. I spotted Jacob and Olivia at an outdoor cafe in uptown Dallas, her leaning in close while he smiled and showed her something on his phone screen. I almost pulled over to confront them right there but kept driving instead. I couldn't risk alerting her prematurely. That same night, I sat alone in my old home workshop, surrounded by the familiar smell of cutting oil and tools neatly organized on pegboards. I remembered bringing little Jacob here when he was young, teaching him the basics. When had I stopped being his involved father and become only the silent supporter working behind the scenes? I reflected on everything I had done quietly for him over the years, creating the Emily Thompson Memorial Scholarship that funded his full ride to college, arranging the prestigious internship through old connections without him knowing, setting up his first major client through a carefully orchestrated introduction, even gently suggesting his recent promotion to Robert. Every door he proudly walked through, thinking he had opened himself, I had actually opened from the shadows. That hidden support had somehow fostered his belief that he was entirely self-made, leaving him vulnerable to someone manipulative. Thursday evening. Thomas arrived precisely at 8:00 p.m. with a thick manila folder. His expression told me everything before he spoke. "William," he said gently, "this is much worse than we initially thought." The folder felt unusually heavy as I pulled it across the kitchen table. The same table where Emily once balanced the books and Jacob once completed his homework. Thomas opened it carefully. The first photograph struck me hard. Olivia at a corporate event. Lighter hair, different style, standing confidently beside a man in his late 40s. David Morrison, Executive VP at Horizon Industries, Spring 2020. He laid out additional photos, the same woman with different men in different cities, always under different names and appearances. Her real name is Olivia Bennett. Thomas explained she was a freelance corporate intelligence operative working in gray areas for hire. He presented a detailed timeline in his neat handwriting. The pattern was consistent 2020 relationship with Morrison lasting 5 months, followed by major database breach at Horizon. Then her disappearance. 2021 to 2022 engagement to another executive at a tech firm. Proprietary designs leaked. Engagement ended quietly. No criminal charges either time. Likely because victims were too embarrassed to report fully. Then in summer 2023, she met Jacob. And it wasn't random chance. She was already contracted by Vanguard Technologies. Her targets are advanced CNC automation patents, full client lists, contracts valued at $45 million currently active. If Vanguard acquired that information, Pinnacle would be finished. The photos blurred together in my mind, different disguises, same calculated approach. Jacob has no idea, I said firmly. No, Thomas confirmed. She specifically targets ambitious young executives desperate to prove they're completely self-made. Their pride makes them blind to the risks. His words hit deeply. Jacob's shame about our working-class roots, his emotional distance over the years, his intense need to claim independent success. I had unintentionally created that vulnerability by staying hidden and letting him believe he had done everything alone. I have to stop this before it's too late, I declared. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. What exactly do you plan to do? Thomas asked. What I should have done years ago, step fully into the light, reveal the full truth, and protect everything that matters most. Thomas nodded slowly, but warned. Jacob is going to learn in the same meeting that you've been the silent majority owner all this time and that his fiancée is a professional spy. That's a lot to process at once. It's better he hears it directly from me in a controlled setting than loses his career and the company to her scheme. Do you want me present with all the evidence prepared? Yes. I need you there to make everything airtight. Thomas left close to midnight. I didn't sleep at all that night. Friday, I reviewed every document and piece of evidence multiple times. Saturday, just before dawn, I opened my laptop and composed the email to the full board of directors, Robert Ellison, and senior leadership team from William Thompson. Subject line: emergency board meeting. Monday, October 7th, 9:00 a.m. Main conference room on the top floor. Mandatory attendance. Critical security matter. My finger hovered over the send button for several minutes. Outside, the weekend was beginning normally, porch lights turning on, neighbors starting their coffee, dogs barking in the distance. Ordinary life continuing as usual. I finally clicked send at 7:10 a.m. Within minutes, responses and phone calls started pouring in from board members and executives whose numbers I recognized, plus several I didn't. Then Jacob's name flashed repeatedly with missed calls. I turned the phone completely off and set it beside the laptop. The message was sent. There was no turning back now. Sunday passed in a haze of ignored voicemails, 22 by evening, and a long solitary walk through the empty factory floors. That's where Sarah found me standing quietly between two large CNC units we had installed together over a decade ago. She didn't ask why I was there on a weekend, or why I looked exhausted and unrested. She simply rested her hand on my shoulder, squeezed gently once, and left me alone with the silent machines and cold steel surroundings. I barely slept Sunday night either. By Monday morning, the Ross Avenue headquarters building no longer felt like the company I had designed and built. It felt more like a tense courtroom awaiting judgment. I arrived at 8:40, rode the elevator to the top floor, and stood outside the main conference room for a full minute, gathering myself before walking in. The large table could seat 25 comfortably. Today there would be 14 key attendees, 14 lives that would leave this room profoundly changed. Robert Ellison was already there, meticulously arranging his papers with the precision of someone who disliked surprises. He looked up as I entered. William, the entire board is quite unsettled. Your email was extremely cryptic with no details. They will understand everything very soon, I replied calmly. Board members began arriving around 8:50. First came Harold Jenkins, 75 years old, broad-chested with hands that still looked like they belonged to an active welder. "Thompson, I didn't expect to see you taking the head seat again. What's all this urgency about?" "You'll know in just a few minutes," I assured him. Next entered Patricia Morgan, sharp-minded and always direct behind her glasses. "7 years since your last emergency meeting call. This better be worth canceling my weekend plans." Then Elizabeth Carter, newer to the board on the finance side, stopped short upon seeing me seated in the founder's traditional chair. "I'm sorry. Who is presiding today?" Robert answered clearly for me. "This is William Thompson, founder and majority shareholder of Pinnacle Manufacturing Group." Her eyebrows rose in surprise. "The founder, I thought he had retired quietly to Florida or somewhere." "Very much still right here in Texas," I said evenly. Michael Evans arrived last, offering a slightly uncertain handshake. "Mr. Thompson, I didn't realize you remained actively involved with Pinnacle." "I've always been deeply involved," I explained, "just not visibly in recent years." At 8:58, the door opened again. Jacob walked in, tie slightly crooked, speaking mid-sentence into his phone until he spotted me at the head of the table. He froze completely, face paling. "Dad, what are you doing here? Why are you sitting in that chair? Please take a seat." "Jacob," I said calmly. He scanned the room in growing panic. "What's going on? You ignored every one of my calls all weekend." "Just sit down for now." He slowly lowered himself into a chair, still clutching his phone tightly like a lifeline. At exactly 9:00 a.m., Robert called the meeting officially to order. "This emergency session has been convened at the request of William Thompson, founder and majority shareholder of Pinnacle Manufacturing Group. William, the floor is yours." Jacob inhaled sharply in shock. I stood slowly. 35 years of hard-earned experience and presentations had never felt this heavy, like stepping off a cliff. Some of you know parts of my story. Most of you do not. 33 years ago, I founded this company with $90,000 saved from steel plant work, one CNC machine, and a small rented warehouse space. I stepped back from visible day-to-day leadership 7 years ago, but I never truly left the company. I have remained involved in every major strategic decision, and I currently hold 73% of all shares through a protected family trust. The room fell into heavy, stunned silence. Jacob suddenly stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You what? You own the majority, Dad. What exactly are you talking about?" "Your hiring process and every promotion were completely legitimate and earned through your own abilities," I said steadily. "Robert conducted fully blind evaluations. You deserved every role. But yes, the board has always known I remained the controlling owner behind the scenes." "Everyone knew the truth except me," Jacob said, his voice cracking with emotion. The averted gazes around the table confirmed it fully. "Please sit down, son. There is more to discuss, and it is far worse than this revelation." Something in my tone made him comply slowly. The door opened once more. Thomas Bradley entered accompanied by 2 security team members carrying a large folder and a laptop projector. "Following the events at the Gala last Friday night," I began, "certain things felt deeply wrong to me. I asked Thomas to conduct a thorough investigation. What he discovered is the reason we are all gathered here today." The large screen illuminated with a photograph of Olivia, but with altered hair color and clothing style, listed under a different name. "This is the woman my son intends to marry," I stated clearly. Except this is not her genuine identity. Thomas stepped forward to present. Her actual name is Olivia Bennett, a freelance corporate intelligence operative specializing in high-value infiltrations. We have confirmed 5 similar operations over the past 7 years, always following the exact same pattern: initiate romantic relationship with rising executive, build deep trust, extract proprietary and sensitive data, then disappear immediately after the breach occurs. A comprehensive timeline appeared on screen with supporting photos, financial records, aliases, and breach reports. Her current client is Vanguard Technologies, our primary competitor. Targeted assets include our proprietary CNC automation processes, full patent details, and active client contracts valued at $45 million. Acquisition of this information by Vanguard would effectively end Pinnacle as we know it. The room erupted with outraged questions, legal concerns, and demands for immediate action. I barely registered the noise. Jacob sat frozen and pale. "This is completely insane," he whispered in disbelief. "You're orchestrating all this just because she made an offhand comment at the party. Because you felt insulted by her words. I am protecting this company that I built," I replied firmly. "And more importantly, I am trying to protect you from serious harm. Olivia loves me genuinely. We are engaged to be married." I gently slid the thick evidence folder across the table toward him. "Please review this for yourself." His hands shook noticeably as he turned the pages slowly, photographs from past operations, bank transfer records, alias documentation, breach timelines. Initial denial faded gradually with each new piece of proof. "There has to be some other reasonable explanation," he said weakly, voice breaking. "She wouldn't do this. She simply can't." He reached instinctively for his phone to call her. "Jacob, please don't contact her yet." He ignored my warning completely. Before he could complete the call, the conference room doors burst open dramatically. Thomas returned quickly with additional security personnel, breathing slightly hard from rushing. "We have detained her." Olivia entered the room flanked closely by 2 guards, her heels clicking confidently on the polished floor. Every step remained perfectly composed. She scanned the room quickly, spotted me at the head of the table, and her expression shifted instantly to practiced confusion and concern. She turned directly to Jacob with a soft, worried voice. "Jacob, thank God you're here. Security suddenly grabbed me from your office without explanation. There must be some terrible misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding whatsoever," Thomas stated firmly, stepping forward. "We caught you 20 minutes ago attempting to access and copy restricted files from Mr. Sa Thompson Jr.'s personal office computer. These are the exact files you were in the process of transferring." The screen now displayed detailed transfer logs, patent documents, financial projections, advanced CNC process details, current client contracts. Everything Vanguard would need to undercut and destroy Pinnacle completely. Olivia's confident smile strained but held steady. "I was only sending myself a single file needed for an upcoming presentation. My laptop battery had died unexpectedly." "Your laptop is currently in your vehicle in the parking garage," Thomas countered calmly. "With battery level at 97% according to remote diagnostics." The board members leaned forward intently, expressions hardening with each revelation. Olivia reached out toward Jacob's arm pleadingly. "Honey, please explain to them that this is all a big mistake." Jacob stared from her hand to the undeniable evidence on screen, his face draining of color completely. "Olivia," he managed weakly. "There is a clear explanation," I said quietly but firmly. "Her real name is Olivia Bennett, and she has successfully executed this exact scheme multiple times before. Thomas advanced the slides to show previous operations with photos and timelines. Olivia finally dropped all pretense. She faced me directly, with cool, calculating eyes. So the hidden founder finally decides to emerge after 7 years. Quite the performance. Harold cleared his throat angrily. Miss Bennett, the payment records alone are damning. I am fully aware of what those records appear to show, she replied sharply. She turned to Jacob without any remaining warmth. Yes, I am employed by Vanguard. Yes, I systematically gathered sensitive information over time. And yes, you provided complete access willingly during our 8-month relationship, sharing passwords freely, discussing strategy late at night, showing me files without hesitation. You were remarkably careless in your trust. Jacob flinched visibly, as if struck. You told me you loved me, he whispered in pain. For one brief moment, her mask slipped slightly, then snapped back harder. I said whatever was required to maintain the operation. The entire room froze in stunned silence. Notes stopped being taken. Sharp exhales echoed. I stood taller. He trusted you completely, I said. That is not carelessness. That is simply being human and believing in someone. Olivia laughed coldly and sharply. Human, you deceived him for 7 full years about owning and controlling this company. You allowed him to believe he had built his entire career independently. We are not so different in our methods. We are nothing alike, I responded firmly. I remained hidden to give him space and freedom to grow. You hid your true intentions to exploit and destroy him professionally. She glanced at Jacob, now slumped forward silently. Look at him closely. His career trajectory, his professional judgment, his future here, all about to collapse completely. Quite the protection you've provided. Any collapse would be the direct result of your actions, I countered. Not mine. Jacob finally lifted his head, voice barely audible. Was any part of us real at all? Olivia regarded him coolly, like evaluating a used tool. You were a cooperative subject, but no, nothing was real. It was purely professional from start to finish. His face crumpled entirely. He dropped his head into trembling hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Thomas, I said quietly, but with authority. Please contact the FBI immediately. Olivia adjusted her jacket smoothly, composure returning. Good luck establishing criminal intent in court. I'm a licensed attorney. I understand exactly where the legal boundaries lie. And we understand discovery processes thoroughly, Elizabeth added sharply. The shell company payments alone provide clear motive and pattern. For the first time, a flicker of genuine uncertainty crossed Olivia's face. FBI agents are already en route, Thomas confirmed. Security moved forward to escort her. She offered no physical resistance, but before exiting, she paused beside Jacob and leaned down to whisper so only those nearby could hear. You are almost too easy to manipulate. Someone who deeply hates and rejects his own roots makes the perfect target. Jacob recoiled sharply, as if physically hit. She looked at me one final time. You should have remained invisible. Mr. Thompson. Now you get to witness your son realize that everything he believed about his success was carefully orchestrated by you. Escort her out immediately, I ordered. Her heels echoed down the hallway as security led her away. The door closed with a soft, final click. Thick silence settled over the room like heavy dust. Harold stood first, William, if you need any support at all, just privacy for now, please, I requested. One by one, board members filed out quietly. Robert paused to squeeze my shoulder reassuringly. Thomas lingered at the door awaiting any instruction. I shook my head slightly. He left respectfully. Soon only Jacob and I remained in the large room. He sat across the wide table from me, tears streaming silently down his face, hands trembling uncontrollably. Behind him, the Dallas skyline glowed indifferently in the morning light. He finally raised his red, hollow eyes to meet mine. The words I had dreaded most since sending the email came quietly but devastatingly. I wish you had never shown up at that gala. Those words struck me harder than anything Olivia had said or done. I stood frozen, watching my son with flushed face, clenched jaw, and tear-streaked cheeks, feeling something deep inside me break. Not rage, but a quieter, more profound pain. Jacob, 5 years, he continued, voice cracking with emotion. 5 years I believed Robert was the true owner and leader. 5 years I worked under him, respected him, modeled myself after him, and the entire time it was you quietly controlling everything from the background. I stepped back and stayed hidden because you made it clear you wanted distance. I explained gently. You told me directly that you didn't want colleagues knowing your father was just a factory machinist with dirty hands. You wanted to establish your career on your own terms, so I gave you the space you asked for. His bitter laugh cut sharply. By completely disappearing, by pretending you were nobody important, by letting me believe I had earned every achievement entirely alone, he turned away to stare out at the gray September skyline, visible through the large windows. You want the complete truth. I was deeply ashamed of our background, ashamed of where we came from, of growing up sweeping workshop floors, living in a modest house, having a dad who worked the line. Hearing him finally admit it aloud shattered something further inside me. That's why I stepped aside and let Robert become the public face. I said softly. I thought if I removed myself from view, you could forge your own path and feel genuine pride in it without any complications from our past. Pride in what exactly? Dad, Jacob asked, voice breaking again. What did I truly accomplish on my own? I hesitated, searching for the right words. He continued before I could respond. The scholarship, the full-ride Emily Thompson Engineering Scholarship. I never thought twice about why it carried Mom's name. He stared at me accusingly. That was your doing. My silence confirmed it. The internship at Bradley Engineering, my first major client contract at Anderson Corporation, the recent COO promotion, all quietly arranged or influenced by you. I provided support and opened doors where I could. I admitted. But you earned every position through your own talent and hard work. Everything I felt most proud of achieving, he whispered painfully, was actually handed to me because of your hidden involvement. I'm nothing. Dad, just a man whose father secretly paved every single step of his path and never told him the truth. You are far from nothing, I insisted. Then what am I really? He shouted suddenly, tears flowing freely. Who am I if none of my success was genuinely mine? I wanted desperately to reach across the table, to reassure him of his brilliance and capability. But the raw pain in his expression held me back. I need time alone to process all this, he said finally, voice quieter. He grabbed his jacket and headed toward the door. Jacob, one question. Is the company fully secure now from Vanguard and her actions? He paused without turning. Yes. Thomas and the FBI have locked everything down tightly. He nodded once stiffly. Son. The door clicked shut softly behind him. I stood alone in the vast, silent conference room. Morning sunlight stretching cold and golden across the polished table while the city continued its indifferent rhythm outside the windows. I wondered deeply if, in saving my son's professional future and the company I built, I had just permanently lost him as my son. January arrived cold and unusually quiet that year. I was back on the factory floor inspecting equipment when Sarah approached me near the main CNC area, clipboard held against her winter coat. He's different now, she said simply, without preamble. I didn't need to ask who she meant. He's been coming down to the floor 3 times a week, she continued, actually talking with the team members, listening to their stories. John is even teaching him lathe work again from the basics. A small weight lifted from my chest. Has he mentioned me at all? She paused thoughtfully, then smiled softly. He's been asking detailed questions about the early days, how you started Pinnacle from absolutely nothing. It's the first time he's ever shown real interest in those stories. 3 weeks later, I received an unexpected email. Dad, I've started therapy sessions. They're helping me work through a lot. I'm not ready for a long, deep conversation yet. But how about coffee? At the corner diner on Maple Avenue, Thursday at 3 p.m. Jacob, I replied immediately. I'll be there without fail. The diner was comfortably half empty that winter afternoon. I arrived early and claimed a window booth with a clear view of the entrance. When Jacob walked in, he looked somehow quieter and less guarded than before. He paused briefly at the door, then slid into the seat across from me. Hey, he said softly. Hey, I replied. We ordered simple coffee. I asked if he still enjoyed pecan pie like when he was younger. He offered a small but genuine smile. Yeah, I do. For a while, we simply sat together, allowing comfortable silence to settle between us naturally. I've been cooperating fully with the FBI investigation, he said eventually, breaking the quiet. Provided them every detail about questions Olivia asked and files she accessed through me. That required real courage on your part, I responded proudly. No, he murmured thoughtfully. It required finally stopping my running away from hard truths, including my relationship with you and our past. I waited patiently for him to continue at his own pace. My therapist explained that I had been using shame as a form of armor. He went on. If I rejected my roots and background first, then no one else could use them to hurt or judge me. He met my eyes directly and steadily. I'm truly sorry, Dad, for that awful night at the gala, for all the years of keeping distance, for feeling ashamed of the incredible man who sacrificed everything to give me a better life. You don't need to apologize to me, I said gently. Yes, I do, he insisted, exhaling shakily. You protected me in ways I never recognized or appreciated, and I treated our shared history like something shameful to hide. The waitress brought our pie slices. Jacob picked slowly at the crust while thinking. I've been spending real time on the floor again, he shared. Learning the machines properly this time, hands-on with the team. I spent so many years believing that world was something to escape and look down on. Turns out it's actually where the most authentic and meaningful work happens. When we finished, we stepped outside together into the crisp January wind. Jacob hesitated briefly on the sidewalk, then reached out and hugged me quickly but sincerely. Stiff at first, but real. Thank you for always protecting me, even when I didn't deserve it. That's simply what fathers do, son. He nodded thoughtfully. Same time and place next week. A warm hope grew in my chest. I would like that very much. We hadn't resolved everything in one meeting, but we had taken the first genuine steps toward healing. And sometimes, a sincere beginning is all that truly matters. Early May brought warmer spring weather and the welcoming smell of barbecue drifting across the Pinnacle employee parking lot during our annual Appreciation Day. Picnic tables with checkered cloths were set up everywhere, families mingling freely, blue-collar workers and office staff together without division. I stood near the loading dock area observing quietly. Jacob was over by the large grill, surrounded by a group of longtime machinists, wearing casual jeans and a company polo shirt, looking relaxed and fully present rather than performing. John clapped him firmly on the shoulder. Your old man kept that aging press running for 4 straight months using nothing but creative fixes and determination during the last downturn. Saved at least 15 jobs when corporate headquarters wanted to shut the whole line down permanently. Jacob looked genuinely surprised. I never knew that full story. Your dad's a quiet legend around here, John said proudly. Sarah appeared beside me holding 2 lemonades. He's changed in a good way, she murmured with a smile. And so have you, William. A few minutes later, Jacob crossed the lot carrying 2 cold sodas and handed one to me. John was just telling the press story from the recession. I chuckled softly. Not exactly my finest moment of professional engineering. He said it saved the entire department and everyone's jobs. Jacob leaned against the railing casually. I spent years thinking stories like that made me look small or held me back. Now I realize they're actually the strongest and best parts of our family legacy. A young employee in his early 20s approached somewhat nervously. Jacob waved him over warmly. Ethan, come meet my father. William. His voice carried clear and unmistakable pride. He founded Pinnacle 33 years ago, starting with just 1 machine and money he saved working the factory line for years. The young man's eyes widened in admiration. That's truly incredible, sir. I had plenty of help along the way from good people, I said modestly. Jacob smiled broadly. That's the real point. Nobody ever builds anything great completely alone. I watched Jacob return easily to the group. No longer the polished executive hiding his origins or the ashamed son rejecting them entirely. He was simply my son. Grounded, authentic, and finally at peace with who he was. The young employee headed back toward the food tables. Jacob turned back to me briefly. You doing okay, Dad? Yes, son. Better than I have in years. Me too, he said softly and sincerely. Finally feeling like myself. Thursday coffee as usual. I wouldn't miss it for anything. He walked a few steps away, then paused and looked back with a warm smile. Love you, Dad. The simple words landed gently and deeply. Love you too, son. 8 months had passed since someone at that gala looked at me like I was worthless. 8 months since my own son stood by in silence. It required facing deep pride, long-held shame, calculated deception, a woman who viewed him only as a target, a devastating breaking point, ongoing therapy, and countless quiet coffee meetings. But we found our way back to each other, not returning to who we once were, but becoming who we were always meant to be together. My name is William Thompson, machinist, father, and founder. I chose to make myself invisible for years, thinking it would protect my son. I learned the hard way that real protection comes only from living openly in the truth. Now neither of us hides any longer. We stand proudly together, exactly where we belong, embracing the calloused hands, the factory floors, the creative duct tape solutions, and every lesson earned through hard work and honesty. Looking back now, I clearly see the heavy cost of hiding and silence. I believed staying unseen would spare my son pain and judgment. Instead, it nearly destroyed our relationship and almost cost us everything. Don't make the same mistake I did. Never allow fear or shame to force you to hide your authentic truth, your origins, your struggles, the rough hands from real work. Those are your strongest foundation, not weaknesses to bury. God granted me 33 years to build a successful company from nothing. But the moment I nearly lost my son taught me what holds true eternal value. He judges us not by impressive titles or accumulated wealth, but by whether we choose to stand courageously in the light or remain hidden in shadows. I stayed hidden for 7 years and unintentionally passed shame to my son. Sometimes complete breaking is necessary before true rebuilding can begin. For me, that breaking started with a woman at a gala who treated me as nothing. For my son, it came from discovering the woman he loved was never real at all. If you are currently ashamed of your roots or hiding parts of yourself to protect someone you love, please hear this clearly. God created you from something genuine and real. Don't ever trade that authenticity for anything shiny but false. This is my true story, not polished or exaggerated to sound perfectly wise, just an honest, raw account of what really happened. Stories from experience are only valuable when told truthfully. They teach resilience through real struggles. They remind us to honor our roots always. They prove the enduring power of truth and reconciliation. This is my true story, fully visible, firmly grounded, and completely real. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments.